Hey YouTube, Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Shaddoll Yugioh deck profile for October 2024. Wanted to update the Shaddoll deck. This was a deck that I was really a fan of when it came out in Duelist Alliance. I like the easy fusion aspect of the deck. It introduced the easiness of a fusion spell, being able to use materials from the main deck to send to the extra deck on top of just the many different Shaddoll monsters, their flip effects, their sent to the graveyard card effects, varying, and also it was a deck that I've been playing a good while on Duel Links as well. So every time I play a deck on Duel Links, I like to look back on the deck in the actual Yu-Gi-Oh TCG and just update it as best as I can with what we have to work with in the current meta. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters. For the Shaddoll monsters are 3 of count, running 3 copies of Shaddoll Wendy. This is one of the best main deck Shaddoll monsters. On the flip, you can special summon 1 Shaddoll monster from your deck in face up or face down defense. And then if it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon a Shaddoll monster from your deck in face down defense. So regardless of how you use Wendy, you'll be getting a special summon of another Shaddoll monster. You can send it off of a fusion summon. You can have it be flip face up. Majority of the time, though, you're going to use her for her fusion summon play, sending her from the deck to the graveyard to then grab you another Shaddoll monster onto the field. We're also running 3 copies of Shaddoll Skomata. With this card, when it's sent to the graveyard, you can send an additional Shaddoll monster as well. So sending 1 Skomata can then be used to send your additional monster as well. The big play with this just gives you resources in the graveyard to then be able to use other cards like our Shaddoll Schism for a better fusion setup by having the materials in the graveyard to use for that play. And Skomata also has a flip effect to just target a monster on the field and destroy it. So destruction power if your opponent just swings into this monster with one of their monsters, and then you can destroy one of their monsters that hasn't attacked yet also. For the lower numbers for the Shaddolls, 2 copies of Shaddoll Hedgehog. For the flip, you can add 1 Shaddoll Spiral Trap from your deck to your hand. So you can add your fusion spell off of this card. And for its sent effect, if it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can add another Shaddoll monster from your deck to your hand. So you have search power for a monster or search power for a Shaddoll Spiral Trap, depending on which one you may want. For the one-ofs for the Shaddoll monsters, write 1 copy of Shaddoll Falco. It has an option when it's flip face up to special summon another Shaddoll from your graveyard onto the field, so just giving you more resources from the graveyard. And when it's sent itself to the graveyard, you can set it onto the field, so setting up the Falco to use the next turn. Also 1 copy of Shaddoll Beast for the draw power when sent to the graveyard, and also for the flip of being able to draw 2 and discard 1 Nail Shaddoll Ariel. On flip, you can target one of your banished Shaddoll monsters and special summon it in face up or face down defense position. So if you use cards like Schism for the banish play, Ariel can then at least set that card back up on the field. And if it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target up to 3 cards in the graveyard and banish them. So more disruption on your opponent's turn as well, using this card, with the last of our Shaddoll monsters being the 1 copy of Shaddoll Dragon. With the flip, you can target a card your opponent controls or return to the hand, and if it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target 1 spell trap card on the field and destroy it. So destruction power for your opponent's back row is very, very handy with this Shaddoll as well, and being able to be sent off of Shaddoll Fusion, you could just have those resources of getting a monster on the field and then also having a spell and trap destruction option also. And then for the non-Shaddoll monsters, 3 copies of Mathematician. I really do like this card in the deck. When it's normal summon, you can send 1 level 4 or lower monster from your deck to the graveyard. And then when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can draw 1 card. So most of the time, you're not even going to use Mathematician for the draw. But being able just to send a Shaddoll monster from level 4 or lower from the deck to the graveyard can give you additional searches and setups. And it's also an Earth monster. So if we want to make El Shaddoll Sheganaga, we can use Mathematician even from the main deck as one of the materials. We're also running a small Perform Mage package, 2 copies of Damage Juggler and 2 copies of Trick Clown for the added search and setup, once again, from the main deck to the graveyard to summon out cards like El Shaddoll Construct, needing a light monster and a Shaddoll monster to be able to summon out. And if you send Trick Clown, you can then also just pay 1,000 life points to special summon it back onto the field as another additional resource to use. And then for the rest of the main deck monsters, 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, a hand trap of choice to use with the impermanences we also run as a small hand trap lineup. The big shutdown in the deck comes down to restriction, thanks to cards like El Shaddoll Winda and some of our other Shaddoll monsters being able to stop special summons and whatnot with their own card effects. For the spells, we run 3 copies of Shaddoll Fusion, one of the best cards in the deck. For this card, fusion summon one Shaddoll monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. If your opponent controls a monster that was special summon from the extra deck, you can also use monsters from your deck. So just being able to activate this card and just send the 2 monsters from the deck, saves other resources in our hand for us to use, and then gaining the additional effects of the Shaddoll monsters also. We also run 3 copies of El Shaddoll Fusion. I would say this is one of your big finishing card play moves, because if you have, let's say, Shaddoll monsters on the field, and you attack into your opponent with them, you can then use the quick play El Shaddoll Fusion to then use those monsters to go into 1 additional monster to swing into your opponent with. So 3 of this spell, so you always have those search ready to go. Also, the 3 copies of Super Polymerization, whether they be your own monsters or using your opponent's resources, because with plenty of the Shaddoll monsters, they just need a specific attribute to be able to summon out. So then being able to use your opponent's monsters and not have them react in response to it as well, thanks to Super Polymerization, definitely does help there. With the last of these spells being 1 copy of Call by the Grave, 1 copy of Foolish Burial, and then the 1 Emergency Teleport. I like it because, once again, Wendy is one of the best cards in the deck, and also just being able to summon it on the field, and then have that fusion resource on the field to use, because then when Wendy is sent, you'll get a special summon off of her also. For the traps, we're running 2 copies of Shaddoll Schism. Now, I run 2 copies of this card because it can be searched quite easily with some of the other cards we run in the deck. During your main phase, fusion summon 1 Shaddoll fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials mentioned on it from your field or graveyard, but it cannot attack directly. Then you can send to the graveyard 1 monster your opponent controls with the same attribute as that fusion monster. So, additional disruption during your opponent's turn. Also, the 1 copy of Shaddoll Core, so we have another special summon resource onto the field, and an add back for Shaddoll Spell Traps in the graveyard. The 1 copy of Resh Shaddoll Incarnation, targeting a Shaddoll monster in your graveyard, special summon it in face up or face down defense, and then you can banish this card and 1 Shaddoll card from your graveyard, activate 1 of these effects, change 1 face down monster you control to face up, or change 1 face up monster to face down. So then just more interruption and disruption using this card, and also the 2 copies of Infinite Impermanence. I run 2 copies of this card. If you didn't want to run Shaddoll Core or Resh Shaddoll Incarnation, you can always put in a 3rd copy of Impermanence for that spot, or you could drop 1 of the Damage Jugglers, or go even for a 41 card count. You're milling a lot in this deck, so there's really not a big inconsistency, with just 1 additional card in the deck to use for those plays. And then the big setup just comes down to the added search power and setup that you can use with your Shaddoll cards as well, because Squamata also just says you can send a Shaddoll card. You could send your spell and traps from the deck to the graveyard and then add them back with other cards, including your Shaddoll extra deck monsters, which for the Shaddoll extra deck monsters, we're running 2 copies of El Shaddoll Winda. Needing a Shaddoll monster and a dark monster must first be fusion summoned, cannot be destroyed by opponent's card effects. Each player can only special summon once per turn, and while this card is face up on the field, if it's sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 Shaddoll spell or trap in your graveyard, add to your hand, adding the add back power with the cards we may have sent off of cards like Squamata back to our hand. 2 copies of El Shaddoll Construct. It also has a send effect to basically send a Shaddoll card when it's special summoned from the deck to the graveyard. So also with this card at the start damage step, if it battles a special summon monster, destroy that monster, and then having the Shaddoll spell or trap add back effect when sent to the graveyard. The 1 copy of El Shaddoll Ab Cologne, the 1 Shekanaga, the 1 Grista, and the 1 Wendigo. Needing 2 Shaddoll monsters with different attributes for Ab Cologne, the Shekanaga an earth attribute, and the Grista fire, while Wendigo is a wind. You have the varying attributes to use, especially with the Super Polymerization targets for the last 3 here when going up against our opponent. And then also the 1 copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. The more dark attributes you have, the better, the easier to make this card, or even just using all your opponent's monsters with Super Polymerization. For the Link monsters, 1 copy of Shaddoll Construct. During your main phase, you can fusion summon 1 Shaddoll fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. If this card's in your graveyard, you can send a Shaddoll card from your hand or face up on the field of the graveyard to special summon this card. It's mostly here as just an additional fusion resource, needing 2 flip monsters to make it. So if you have these Shaddoll monsters and not the actual resources to use to get them out, you can use Construct for that summon. The 1 Dark Trevor Gloomy, along with the 1 Cross Sheep, 1 Moon the Closed Heaven, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, and the 1 Underworld Goddess for the rest of the Link monsters. And then as for some of the go-to plays of the deck, now let's say your opponent has that extra deck monster in the field. You can rely on your Shaddoll Fusion for a good majority of your setup. As long as they have that special summon monster, you can then send cards like Shaddoll Wendy and then also your Squamata to the graveyard. Your main play off of the summon. You will be restricted for your special summons with this summon, but you can summon out your Shaddoll Winda. And then from there, you can use both of your cards. Wendy will special summon a monster. I like to special summon Beast because then you'll just have more draw power. Coming after that, Squamata can send an additional monster. You can send the Hedgehog off of the Squamata. Squamata will then allow you with the Hedgehog search to add off of Hedgehog. And with that, you already have your one special summon. You can set an additional Shaddoll monster on the field. If you have any of your quick play spells or any of your traps like Schism, you have monsters ready in your graveyard to use for that additional Schism play. If you have Shaddoll Fusion, you have the Beast and the Squamata to summon out an additional monster. It all depends on what you want to go for, but getting a Winda restriction on the field is a big part of what the deck can do restrict-wise for your opponent's summoning. But as always, that is it for the deck profile, and I hope you all enjoyed. And until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.